Good evening, everyone. Welcome to November public meeting. And if you're joining for the first time, special welcome to you, and anyone joining from home, welcome to you all. You can tune in as you are having your dinner or just wrapping up your work. Thank you once again for joining us. This meeting will be probably try to keep it super quick one, as this was we had an election last month, and you all would have probably attended our election forum, and so now the election is out of the way, so we're back to the business. So we're going to provide some GCC updates before we're going to jump into the speaker for today. So today's plan is to get some updates from GCC Brief 1, and then we have invited the MLAs to come down tonight to give some kind of a meet and greet. What's the plan, what's the vision for the next 4 years. Unfortunately, not everyone could make it today, but I'll talk about it when I introduce the MLA was here, which is Andrew Braddock. Thank you, Andrew, for coming down tonight. So as part of the GCC updates, we want to say the next meeting would be our AGM meeting. So we're going to do it as part of the December public meeting. And then we do have other speakers organised for that meeting. We'll keep you updated on the group. And we had a meeting with the TCCS, I think last week or maybe a couple of weeks back. We had a discussion about the active transport, which Darren will come and give us an update. So I'll invite Darren to come and provide some brief update on that.
Yeah, so just a quick update. There was a meeting that the GCC had with TCCS in regards to active travel. So some of the routes that they were looking at was essentially examining some of the issues that have been brought to their attention in regards to specific active travel routes around Gungahlin. So it was good to have a bit of stakeholder engagement in regards to how the planning might go in the future in regards to that. There is a history within Gungahlin in regards to the linkages between Gungahlin and some of the outer suburbs, and there's a lot of concerns that have been raised by certain groups like Pedal Power and a number of others about the fact that Gungahlin, the central CBD of Gungahlin, is a little bit hostile to people when they're riding bikes and in active travel. I raised with them some of the issues that I was in the community consultation for Gungahlin East, which is in regards to hopefully having some sort of central repository for scooters and bikes when people come into the town centre. At the moment you can just sort of chain them up, but a lot of the times people tend to have, especially children, they tend to have fairly expensive devices, scooters and things like that worth many thousands of dollars. And a lot of people, if they could be chained up in an environment that was a little bit more secure, because there's been a lot of incidents in the past with people using bolt cutters and things like that, simply cutting the locks and actually taking the really expensive modes of transport. Initially, when I was on the community consultation for the light rail, one of the biggest issues that was mentioned is about the last mile, it was termed. So people that take the light rail, if they're going into the city, how they're going to get from the light rail to the last sort of kilometre or the last mile to get to their workplace. But you also have the issue when they come home as well about how they're going to get the last mile. Bus transportation is often notoriously not necessarily very hospitable for bikes. People often put their bikes on the front of the buses and things like that, not necessarily the easiest. And if you've got a scooter, you've got no real option as to how to get that on a bus, essentially. So with the prevalence that I mentioned about children that are travelling to schools nowadays, a lot of them are actually using scooters, it does make a lot of sense to actually have a think about some novel approaches to the security within Gungahlin. There are some things that I brought up in the community consultation group for Gungahlin East, which was looking at, it might seem a little far-fetched, but in Japan, for example, they have specialist centres where they take their bikes in, and the bikes are actually taken into a sort of like a central repository, and you come back and you tap in and your bike is sort of brought back out and sort of given to you. One of the things that I guess I would like to see is a bit of a 21st century solution to bike sort of transport within Gungahlin. Also spoke about the condition of some of the paths around Gungahlin. There's some of them that are in really bad state, and it would be good not to just look at the active travel routes, but it would be also good to start to look at some of the black spots that exist within the town centre. And some of the accesses across some of the arterial roads are actually quite difficult. So from an active travel perspective, I also brought up Yarrabee Ponds. That's the other hat that I wear with the Friends of Yarrabee Pond, which is to also look at how we can get buses actually traversing down to Yarrabee Ponds again. So there's a number of different issues that we brought up. It will be just sort of factored into how they're sort of going to look at that traffic model. Obviously nothing has sort of been released yet sort of publicly, but I just wanted to explain that the Gungahlin Community Council is engaged as a stakeholder in this process, along with other community groups like Pedal Power. And we're trying our best to try and relay the information we get from the general public about what their concerns are to the ACT government to incorporate in their future plans. So, that's it for me.
Thank you, Darren, for the quick update. So, as part of this week agenda, we invited all the Yarrabee re-elected MLAs, and firstly, congratulations to those who have been elected. Unfortunately, we got an apology from few of them. We got an apology from Susan Orr, James Milligan, and from Leanne Castley as well. So, but we do have a note from James Milligan. He likes to come at another time, but I want to read some notes that he has written to Community Council for us to read it out tonight. I'll just read out James Milligan MLA's note. Firstly, I would like to say thank you to all those who voted and supported me in my re-election campaign. Thank you for the honour in continuing to represent the residents of Yarrabee in my third term as a member of the Legislative Assembly. Forums like this one is an avenue in which I hear about the concerns and issues residents have and can advocate on your behalf to the government. Thank you for your dedication and care for the Gungahlin community and aspiring to help make it a better place for families and all those that live there. It is great to align myself with the like-minded individuals who care about Gungahlin and the Yarrabee electorate as much as I do. One of my electorate goals this term is representing the key issues in Yarrabee, such as local employment opportunities, better urban maintenance, representing the need for road upgrades and improvements, addressing the shortage of police and resources, and combating local illegal dumping. I'll be restarting my community barbecues and hot chocolates in each suburbs to engage with the constituents and part of our community outreach program. I have always had and continue to have an open door policy and happy to meet with any resident, community group or organization to hear what you have to say. I'm here to help, and if you have not already, follow me on socials for updates on local issues and what I've been up to. Thank you, and looking forward to working alongside you in supporting our community in Gungahlin. So that's the message from James. Thank you, James, for your message. And I think what we send out as part of our note, we are asking MLAs to identify what their plans for the next 4 years for Gungahlin. Now the election is all done and dusted. Now back to the business. So the intention is to make sure they deliver what they promise and what matters for the community. And I think as a response, I can see some of the items that James wants to work on, which is local employment opportunities, which is a key thing for us. and then better urban maintenance representing the need of the road upgrades and improvements. And the road upgrades is a key thing which we've been calling out for a decade, more than a decade now. And addressing the shortage of police and resources, which is also one of the key issues. So I hope James will able to continue to broadcast this in the Legislative Assembly and work along with the community. Cool. All right. Next we have Andrew. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us tonight in person, which is great. And I would like to invite you, Andrew, and congratulations on your re-elected position, which is great. And we would like to know about your plan for the next 4 years. What's your vision and how you want to tackle those ones? Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Henley. Thank you also to the Gungahlin Community Council for having me along. I really appreciate that in terms of a chance just to discuss the really local issues that are here in Gungahlin. Firstly, in terms of my plans for the next 4 years, you might have noticed there's been a slight change within the Assembly. In terms of my role has changed, where formerly last term I was within the government. Now I am sitting on the crossbench, so that means my role will shift more to someone who can be, let's say, a bit more outspoken in the criticism of the government from the crossbench. And that's what I aim to do. In terms of my vision for Gungahlin in particular, firstly, Gungahlin Town Centre East. That is such a critical element to ensuring that it is built out with the economic opportunities, the employment opportunities, the retail and the social spaces that are critical to make Gungahlin truly a district and not just a dormitory suburb. So whilst the government has released the Gungahlin Town Centre East place design framework, and there's some very good elements in that, like I wholeheartedly support the CRT being located there and increasing its presence within Gungahlin to increase the number of technical training that's happening here in Gungahlin. What I'm extremely concerned about is the fact that that framework sets no minimum standard in terms of what space is going to be set aside for employment or economic generation. And so my fear is if we continue to see a trend where you might have multi-storey apartment complexes with small retail offering leases down the ground floor, it will be a continuation of that trend of Gungahlin being a dormitory suburb, and that's not what I want to see. That's not my vision for Gungahlin. I want to see a district where people can stay in the district in order to take up employment, in order to go shopping, in order to access services, whether it may be medical, legal, whatever it might be. There needs to be a vibrant centre here to Gungahlin. So I'll be really looking at that. I promise this was on my notes before Darren mentioned it, but in terms of accessibility of the Gungahlin Town Centre is another key issue. We did have an initiative during the campaign about that, where if you want to walk, ride, scoot your way into the Gungahlin Town Centre, it's extremely challenging over those final, let's say, 400 metres. And so I want to look at how we improve those connections and also have good storage facilities here in the town centre once you actually get in. Because then that will reduce some of the demand of traffic that's trying to move around the Gungahlin Town Centre at the moment, and we're experiencing quite a lot of congestion. We also need to look at some of the intersections so that we can safely get pedestrians and cycle riders and anyone else through there without having to navigate their way through basically a moat of traffic, and figuring out how we can get the traffic flows that allow that to move smoothly but also safely. I'll also be holding the government to account in terms of some of its key initiatives of improving health services here in the Gungahlin district. So for example, a new health centre in Casey. That was also part of our Greens Initiative's announcements, plus also the increased health services being made available at the Walk-in Centre here. So they include some things like mental health supports as well. Also, in terms of some of the sports and recreation elements, for example, the Labor is committed to an indoor sports recreation facility at Casey. I want to ensure that is of a sufficient standard and size, that it meets the needs of the Gungahlin district, because one thing I've consistently heard from a lot of constituents is in terms of the level of services and infrastructure here does not match the booming population we've experienced. And so we need to ensure that we actually get that delivered. Speaking of which, I've been very frustrated in terms of the delays for the community centre at the corner of Efkapides and Gungahlin Place. I had been assured that construction would commence before the election. That obviously has not happened. We are still at least a couple of years away at best from that being open. So hence trying to ensure that project is completed as soon as possible, so we have a quality community space that people can actually come together in the Gungahlin area. Something again, for a population of about 90,000 people here in the district, we need to have that infrastructure and those services in place. In terms of other things, let me just think, done that. Oh, education as well. We've got, along with booming population, we particularly need more college space, so we've got the proposal for a new college out at the Nichols site, not till the end of the decade. I'm not sure whether Gungahlin College will be able to cope with the demand between now and then, or we'll have to examine that. Perhaps with the movement of the library to Town Centre East, that creates opportunity, but I still question whether we have enough to be able to meet the needs of the district, and sort of that would be something I'll be looking at. Outside Gungahlin, but also has a direct impact on us, is in terms of getting light rail across the lake into the Triangle. There are so many people who live in the Gungahlin district who work within the National Triangle who'd love to be able to catch light rail to work instead of having to catch multiple buses to make that happen. So I really want to see that become a thing, so that people will be able to easily not have to drive all the way into the city every day, but simply jump on the light rail and then be able to get off at the other end and be able to walk to their workplace. So that's what I'll be looking for. In achieving that, I will continue to attend as many of these GCC meetings as I can. I think they're critical in terms of you being able to ask me any questions that you might have about what's happening, or issues or concerns that you've identified. But it's also a great way for me to learn what are your concerns, or what are the things that's happening on the ground that may not necessarily be known to government or to us in the Assembly, because we can't be everywhere across the district. So I really appreciate the opportunity of working with the Gungahlin Community Council and the attendees in the meeting, just to gain that information, and that makes me a more effective representative. So I might call it quits there, but very happy to answer any questions online or from the room that people may have.
Hello, Andrew. My name's John. I'm from a company called Englobo Group. We hold a large parcel of land in the town centre, and we have ambitions to deliver on many of those aspects and aspirations you have for the town centre. Mm-hmm. And we're pleading today for some support to help, because the bureaucracy leads us down a mixed-use path. That's all I'll say today.
Yep. And that's, I agree, in terms of the frustration you feel, I entirely feel, because we want to see more than just a multi-storey apartment complex full of residences where everyone just gets up and leaves in the morning and leaves the district and comes back at the end of the evening. We want to see something that's got truly employment opportunities, economic opportunities, retail opportunities that help service the population of Gungahlin. So would love to hear a bit more detail if you'd like to at the end of the meeting.
Got some questions from online, Andrew.
Yep.
I guess I'd be the first to say that hearing about not being tied to mixed use is a really good thing, because I think that's what the Community Council has been asking for a long time. So that's a really good comment to make, I think, so I'm really happy about that. I just had to make that comment because, you know, often a lot of the times that's exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about the dormitory suburb, essentially, that the mixed use is essentially the ground floor, and that has a couple of shops that really usually only service that building, and that ticks the box of mixed use. But the rest of the community, I think the core reason as to why they sort of don't like a lot of these mixed use developments is because they're aware of that, and it's not really much of much help to the rest of the community. So I think the Community Council had your support a lot in regards to looking at a certain percentage, I think it was, of Gungahlin East, of the particular developments being of a commercial nature. I think that would have gone a long way, but unfortunately that was agreed to in principle. But I don't think that was ever really ratified, and I don't think that has much teeth. And so I think in a lot of ways, the more that we can sort of look at Gungahlin East and trying to increase the amount of commercial space, I think the general community would be happier with that.
Yes.
So thanks for that. And so some of the comments online, we still don't have a tennis centre. That should have been completed by now. Who's holding the government to account for that? I think that would be the one behind Amaru School.
That is entirely correct. I know a development application has been approved, but that project has been much delayed. Yes, and I share the community's frustrations at those delays.
I'm going to throw in the cinema because, so many people talk about that all the time. I know that there was an extension or something given to the cinema, but we still don't know where that is. I think we asked a few different government departments for official responses on that. Did we get anything back? No. So,
Yep.
don't know where that is.
My concern about the cinema is the government has been failing to enforce the conditions on the lease conditions on that site, and that's been the primary problem. The secondary problem has also been the economic model for cinemas has been much reduced since COVID. So whilst I'm not so sure whether it's possible that a cinema might be a viable economic proposition for the town centre, I would still say there's a package of land that's been sold that for a purpose, but no community benefit has been realised. It's currently just surrounded by fencing and full of rubbish. So even if the developer is not meeting if the developer is not meeting the conditions of their licence, what are the penalties that have been enforced to ensure that a community good is realised from the actual utilisation of that land? The government's not enforcing that, and that's something I intend to take up.
I guess the reverse to that would be that if cinemas are not commercially viable, then probably wouldn't that go back to the initial fact that there was another cinema operator that was also willing to sort of build in that area that was a much larger cinema operator, and potentially if the government had have gone down that route, or that potentially we would have had a more likelihood of a cinema being built because they probably would have had a larger pool of money in order to make that more viable. So maybe the viability might be depending on how large a cinema operator you are.
Possibly.
Could factor into that as well.
Yes.
So that's a question. Do anyone have any questions?
I'm limited as to what I can say about the actual cinema, but what I can say is there are operators willing to commit to a cut-down version of the cinema in the Gungahlin community today. It picks up Andrew's point about viability. They're a smaller, more boutique version, but still a cinema, so to speak, driven by food. What we need is to get behind these opportunities for the community to make that happen, and not let the bureaucracy and roads and intersections and excuses. We live in an outcomes-based territory plan environment now, where the benefit of the community is number one. So we sort of call on the next Legislative Assembly to enforce those attributes of the outcomes-based system and let those developments deliver the attributes that the community wants.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. We do have a couple more questions before I get into mine. So one of the questions from online is, what's happening with the soccer complex in Throsby?
Yep. So basically what was originally announced as being the Home to Football, which was a partnership between the ACT government and was it Capital Football? A football association. They were unable to provide their side of the money, so hence it's no longer going to be the Home of Football complex as envisaged and announced. Instead, it's now going to be basically what you could describe as the Throsby District playing fields. So it will be a series of soccer fields with lighting, change rooms and other sort of associated facilities, but not to quite the same standard as had originally been announced as that Home of Football, because the partner fell through and wasn't able to contribute their share of the cash.
Okay, that's an interesting one to know that there's a change in the plan and stuff. I'm not sure whether there was a announced in the media or something? Or
I can send you through some
Yeah,
details or
that'd be
the
good.
announcement if you like.
Yeah.
It has been made public,
Okay.
but yes, I
Cool.
can send that through to you.
Yeah, well, it'd be good if they're doing those soccer fields and stuff. You know, I think the original plan was this, and if they're compromising on the other one. Talking about the soccer fields, and we always get a lot of emails about the car parking around the soccer fields, and we don't provide a good car parks around the soccer field, but aiming to get all the parents to park in the right places. And if you go on the weekends, you know, as a parent, you would probably noticed as well, like everyone trying to get the kids in, kids out, but the street parking all crazy and stuff, and then everyone gets a ticket as well as a bonus.
Yep.
Because the first instance, as a government, they fail to deliver a, you know, if they know if there's a soccer field, they also definitely would have known that's how many traffic was going to come, and what's the options for those people. So, in terms of constructing these new soccer fields and stuff, it'd be good, like the government can involve with the public to make sure that enough car parks all being allocated.
Yep.
You know, or I'm not sure whether it's kind of a revenue model where they plan to provide only limited car parks and, you know, increase the revenue by charging the people.
I don't think that's a conscious decision. I think there is an element of economics at work where to construct a car park of a large size to suit what might be a small usage rate. For example, Saturday mornings or weekends are probably the most likely time where you get the highest level of usage of a said car park, maybe after school, after work, sort of in the weekday evenings. So hence why they're probably trying to reduce the size of the car park as much as possible to save the money, but inadvertently then creating the impacts around the neighbouring areas, like for example Harrison. Sporting fields, spoke to many a door front there about people complaining about the parking that would just clog up the entire street, and the potential risk that there is to pedestrian safety, as you've got parents with young kids trying to walk or navigate their way through illegally parked cars to be able to get to the soccer fields.
Yeah.
But so yes.
So it's there should be balance in there when they do the suburbs and houses around that place, that they need to consider all those things. So it looks like, as usual, we kind of be not a proactive but rather a reactive thing. So hopefully they could avoid those kind of reactive approaches. So,
Yep.
this is an interesting question, probably very much personal to you, Andrew. Have you changed your views on increasing police numbers in ACT and Gungahlin?
I've always said Gungahlin, as the population increases, is going to need more police. What I am disappointed about is we have not been able to progress the project. We're moving the AMBOs and the fireys out of the JESC in order to give enough space for the police to do what they need to do to provide the services they need to the local community. That's been a frustration for me, and that's what I want to see advanced as soon as possible.
Okay, cool. So there's another one. Let me see. Yeah, so this is regarding the car park as well. Increased car parking at playing field for weekend use. Weekend use also allows for park and ride options, especially when near schools. So we could use that as a park and ride options as well, and plan it accordingly. So you can hit the.
That would definitely be a great thing. What I would also love to see is more frequent buses on the weekend, because if, for example, you're on 2-hourly buses, not many people are going to utilise the park and rides so around the field. So hence why I would be keen to see more frequent bus services to enable people not to have to take their cars to those
You
facilities.
seems to be talking like a very visionary, Andrew. Like we can't even get a normal peak hour bus that could connect Gungahlin to the rest of the districts.
Yep.
You know where I'm going, right? I've been telling it more than a decade now.
Yep.
And it seems like no one is listening. They talk about sustainability, they talk about green and all those things, but every time we see people comes in and they say they don't really consider those options. So, hey, duplicate our roads. Give us some good public transport which has a connectivity, because at the moment, and it's all like a domino effect, right? Like, you don't have employment up, so people need to exodus, and then they need to come back. So that means they need to go to different things. If you want to reduce the traffic on road, you need to provide a good public transport. And it always goes back, then people say, oh, we got a light rail. Look, light rail doesn't go everywhere, at least now.
No.
So we need that. If you can push or help us to push how we can do that connectivity across Gungahlin to the other districts. So especially with, in terms of at least in the peak hours, we need that connectivity to the Warden and Tuggeranong, and then same way with the, the Brindabella Park, the airport side as well. So it'd be amazing to have that ability, and then that could probably help us, and this is not the thing. This is the kind of a basic thing that we've been asking for a long time. So it'd be good to know your view on, how we can push. At one stage, someone said we're going to do it like a trail or kind of a test to see how much traffic they can get. And at the moment, they always come up with the funny explanation saying we don't have data to show that there's no evidence to show that people taking the bus. Of course, there's no evidence because no one is doing it, because there's no, it takes more than 2 hours if you do with the current kind of setup, which takes like at least 3 different, bus and stuff. So it'd be good to know your view. And I think if we can push this as a priority kind of in the first 6 months, would be great.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was in the room in 2016 when Megan Fitzharris made that promise of a trial for the, the Gungahlin to the Tuggeranong bus service, Henley, and I've shared that journey with you.
Yeah.
For people to actually catch the bus, it needs to be frequent, reliable, and convenient.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why are they going to do it? And so for that is the critical aspect where we need to, if we want people to take up the bus, and I suggest that we strongly do, if only because that is the best congestion busting action we can have, is if people get out of their cars and step on a bus, we need to provide that. So that's the onus on us as a government, as your representatives to do. And that's what I promise in terms of I'll be definitely championing as an issue in this next term as well. Because at the moment we've got the same number of buses we did back in 1996. We still have an EBA where it basically precludes people, bus drivers actually working on the weekends, which is why we have such poor services on the weekends. And we just hence don't have a network that actually takes people where they want to go. And part of the problem, as you described, where Action will describe it as a demand-led network. The problem is if the service isn't there, there's no demand. So there's no evidence to demonstrate that people actually want to get from point A to point B, wherever that may happen to be. And so hence they just go, no point. And so we need to change that mentality into how we're going to be providing convenient, frequent bus services to get people where they want to go. And that needs a total mindset change within Action and total mindset change within the government.
Yeah, it'd be great if you can take this as your kind of a first 6 months or want to achieve this, and then we can probably get our alignment with the rest of the Harrowby MLAs to push kind of some kind of a bill, or I don't know, whatever you need to do. It'd be great. So because this has been going on for ages, as you know.
Agree.
And the other thing as well, the duplication of the rest of the RTL roads like Ospark and Clary Ames and stuff. So, the other thing as well, because we don't have the road being duplicated, so that we couldn't have a dedicated lane for the buses as well to make it faster and stuff. So, and we, I think I was in a meeting, they're planning for 2045 vision kind of a thing to say, okay, what do we like to see in Gungahlin? Even in that plan, they don't have a road duplication. And they're saying by the time no one needs to take the car, because everything public transport will be available at the foot of your street or whatever it is. And my question was, even in Singapore, they don't, most of the people takes the public, 90% of the population probably take the public transport, and all the roads are wide and big. So you still, even if you're going to go on a model purely depend on the public transport, the taxis or common transport method, you still need the road duplication. So I think it's a key thing, and we've been telling this the same issues more than a decade now. So is it in your radar? Would you be able to push this through as well to get a better outcome for the community?
Well, definitely. Firstly, I'd say buses stuck in traffic don't serve anyone. That's they're just stuck like everyone else in road traffic, and that doesn't work for us. And And whilst that might be a very nice idea, as you described for 2045, of public transport available at the end of every road, we need to actually make that happen. Otherwise, that's not going to happen. So that will require a significant investment over a period of time in order to get those buses in place. And then there's the case of how we're going to do the interim steps along the way, in terms of we're not going to have this sort of service overnight. So how do we still have the mobility of people moving around, to whether it be for employment, going to school, going to the shops? We still need to be able to answer those questions, and that's what we need to look at. So I think it's a bit of a cop-out for people saying, oh yeah, we'll have this magical public transport system that will mean we don't need to invest in that, without actually following that through and saying, okay, we actually need to invest in that public transport system in order to start realising those benefits.
Yeah, and I think Gungahllin's probably the only district where we don't have a bus lane going more than 50 metres. I can see the bus lanes only in the lights.
Yep.
And other than that, probably Gungahllin's the only district.
You're probably right. I'm just
Yeah.
running through the other districts in
Yeah.
my head and sort of going,
Yeah.
A lot of them have significant busways.
So we've been left out, and I know what's the response they're going to say, like, because you got the light rail. So again,
Well, that works in one direction.
yeah, that's right.
But it
Like,
doesn't
it's not-
necessarily.
Yeah, it's not going to. So that's what I'm saying. That we need to have a balance, and then the connectivity and so the road duplication as well is a key thing for that one, and the employment thing. So I'm not sure what's your plan for the employment for the next 4 years.
So I wish we could move a large federal department into Gungahlin Town Centre East, but unfortunately there's just zero appetite from the federal government to do so.
But I thought this was an issue when Liberal was there. There was a Liberal who doesn't want to do it, but I think it's kind of so irrespective of who is in the centre or the federal, I think the issue remains the same. But I think at least last time we had some small departments. I'm not sure whether we can bring any small departments. That would be great, rather than renewing a high price lease in city, and we can give them some kind of discounts or some kind of incentive. I'm not sure what kind of incentives that the ACT government's offering the federal government to attract more business into the space.
Yeah. Part of the challenge has been actually the airport with its, let's just say, its ability to charge very cheap rent, compared to other office locations in Civic and so forth. And a lot of departments like to be as close as possible to the triangle. That's been an incentive there. So whilst I was saying no large departments can be dropped in, I take a lot of heart, for example, Defence now has a part of that DHA building set up where they actually have a smart work hub. And that is oversubscribed by defence workers who live in the Gungahlin area but want to come in, work on a computer, talk to maybe some other people in a similar sort of area, access printers and so forth. So I can see scope for more of that sort of facility, expanding the size and scope to increase that. And I saw that on pre-poll, where you would see them coming up and down at lunchtime, going to the local cafe, and you would sort of go, great, they're bringing economic benefit in. They didn't have to travel far in order to come into work. They've still got that social connection from meeting and talking with other people across Defence. So I think that's partly the scope there. I also believe there's quite a lot of opportunity in more services being located in Gungahlin Town Centre East, whether that be medical services, aged care services, training, things that will draw people in. And then whilst they're there, they'll do other things, whether it may be shopping, go to a cafe, chat with someone at a local park. That's all great things that help contribute to Gungahlin Town Centre becoming a destination and people coming together, whilst also creating that employment and that economic development. So that's what I'll be also looking at, is what other types of spaces can we encourage in Gungahlin Town Centre East to be able to generate all of those benefits.
Yeah, good. I think hopefully we think outside the box, because previously we were just, I think most of the time everyone focused on the federal departments, but I think we can have it as one option, but that's not the only option, if you know what I mean. Like, when we need to test around the aged care services and other hotels, maybe some of the different kind of ideas, and maybe the startup companies want to start here. I don't know.
Yep.
We just need to make sure we give some kind of incentive to attract the business. And I'm not sure if I'm going to send an email out to ACD, I'm asking what have you done to attract business. We should have a data to start with, and I'm not sure whether they have done anything to attract those kind of investments other than the apartments, residential apartments kind of things.
The previous term, the government did do a prospectus, I think that might be the right word, trying to encourage people to come out here. As far as I can see, I've seen no benefit or outcome arise from that process. But I just mentioned that in terms of that was something they did try. And so I think we need to work harder in this area if we wanted to see it happen.
I think we want an activity that's not that tick in a box kind of thing. So sometimes, we done it, tick in the box, so we don't want that, but we want a real work and stuff. But I think any other questions for Andrew? Yep.
No, not really.
Yep.
Not really a question for Andrew, more just a comment on traffic in the town centre. You mentioned duplication of the road network. Is that of the roads surrounding the town centre, or are you talking increased travel lanes within the town centre?
So I'm referring to the roads like Ospark Drive, Clary Ames Drive. So those are the ones they already marked that needs a duplication. So those are the...
So there's an acceptance, the earlier comments around the GCC's position on active travel and promoting active travel within the town centre, which is a good thing. That's an acceptance that the existing travel lanes that we have for cars won't be increased. And so there's this natural tension between wanting, big box employment and people to come and work here within an existing road network, which is only going to get more congested. And we don't want to make this a car-dominated town centre. We actually want to support active travel and public transport and so on. So there has to be an acceptance that if you want those activities in the town centre, there's going to be increased congestion of cars if people insist on using cars to get to those locations. You can't kind of have it both ways. So I think some of the tension that we're seeing in trying to get the outcomes that the community wants here is that they want all of that, but then the government's putting requirements around a level of service traffic that can't be met if those uses are put into the town centre. So I think it's really important that the Community Council adopt a position on that, that if we want those uses, there has to be an acceptance that from time to time there's going to be congestion, which there is in all capital cities and all dense areas. When you go in there at busy times, you're going to be delayed. You're not going to be able to just drive straight through, get a car park, hop out and do your business. You might be, stuck in traffic for a little bit. And that should force people to consider other travel options or using their car outside of those busy periods.
Yeah, the point we're trying to make, it's the public transport shouldn't nothing to do with the road duplication. It still needs to happen, and they need to complete it. And with the public, at the moment the road, even the bus goes on the same lane, so it's not going to improve or it's not going to attract. And the second thing was we're saying we need more connectivity with the public transport. That would attract people to take it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And in terms of government needs to come up with a plan to show what's their plan for the next 5 years, how they're going to see the traffic model going to work, what's the infrastructure they're going to put through, how they're going to increase the public transport. All they need to work it out, and which we've been calling out for ages, and still the same thing.
Question to the Gungahlin Community Council, maybe Andrew might have insight. They've been promising the release of the Gungahlin Transport Plan for a while. With the new Legislative Assembly in place, do you have an indication of the timing for that release? Because that Gungahlin Transport Plan will answer the questions that you're posing there around what are the upgrades, what's happening with active travel, what's proposed around intersection upgrades, what's happening, what's the investment for public transport. There's been many studies over the last couple of years and the government sitting on their hand, so I would encourage the Gungahlin Community Council to be pressurising for the release of that study.
Andrew, do you want to comment on when that study would be?
No, I don't have on that study. I would note the ACT Labor, as part of its election commitment, promised $10 million as part of basically design into intersection upgrades of the local rounds in the town centre. But I've not actually heard a date as to when that plan was going to be released.
So we will continue to work enforcing that.
2026 is the year they say that the traffic is fully congested in the town centre.
Right. Cool.
Which is not horrible.
Yep.
Excellent. All right.
All
Thank
right.
you so much, Andrew, for your time.
No, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining tonight. I think that's it for tonight. And we will see you on the next public meeting, which is on December. Thank you, and God bless. Have a good night.